In January 1959, a group of 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition in the remote Ural Mountains. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a skilled engineering student and experienced mountaineer. Their goal was to reach a distant mountain deep in the wilderness of the Soviet Union. The journey was difficult, with freezing temperatures and deep snow covering the mountains. But the hikers were well prepared and used to surviving in extreme winter conditions. On the night of February 1st, the group set up their tent on a snowy slope in a remote mountain pass. At that moment, everything seemed normal. But during that night, something terrifying happened. Ghost emoji, snowflake emoji. Weeks later, rescue teams arrived in the remote Dyatlov Pass searching for the missing hikers. What they discovered was deeply disturbing. The group's tent was found partially buried under snow on the mountain slope. But the strangest detail was how the tent had been opened. Investigators discovered that the fabric had been cut from the inside. It looked as if the hikers had desperately escaped through the side of the tent. Even more shocking, many of the footprints suggested they left without proper winter clothing. And outside, the freezing wilderness waited in the darkness. Snowflake emoji, ghost emoji. Investigators began following the footprints leading away from the tent at Dyatlov Pass. The tracks moved slowly down the snowy slope toward a nearby forest. What made the scene even stranger was that the footprints showed no signs of panic or running. It looked as if the hikers had calmly walked away from their tent. But the temperature that night was estimated to be around -30 degrees Celsius. Walking outside in such conditions without proper clothing was almost certain death. When rescuers finally reached the forest, they made a chilling discovery. 2 bodies were found lying near the remains of a small fire. Snowflake emoji, ghost emoji. Near the edge of the forest below Dyatlov Pass, rescuers discovered the bodies of 2 hikers. They were lying close to the remains of a small fire beneath a large tree. The men were barefoot and wearing only thin clothing, despite the extreme cold. It appeared they had tried desperately to survive the freezing night. Broken branches high in the tree suggested that someone had climbed it, possibly trying to see the tent in the distance. A few days later, search teams discovered 3 more bodies scattered across the snow. They seemed to be trying to make their way back toward the tent. But the mystery was far from over. Snowflake emoji, ghost emoji. Months after the first discoveries at Dyatlov Pass, rescuers continued searching the frozen wilderness. When the snow finally began to melt in spring, they found the last 4 members of the expedition. The bodies were discovered deep in a nearby ravine, buried under meters of snow. What investigators found shocked everyone. Several of the hikers had suffered severe internal injuries, including broken ribs and skull fractures. Yet strangely, there were almost no external wounds on their bodies. One victim was missing a tongue, and others had unexplained damage to their eyes. The cause of these injuries remains one of the most disturbing parts of the mystery. Snowflake emoji, ghost emoji. After the tragic discovery at Dyatlov Pass, investigators struggled to explain what had happened to the hikers. The strange injuries and the abandoned tent raised many disturbing questions. Some experts suggested that a powerful avalanche might have forced the group to flee their shelter during the night. Others believed that a rare natural phenomenon, known as infrasound, could have caused extreme panic and confusion. Over the years, many other theories appeared. Some people even speculated about secret military tests in the mountains during the Cold War. But despite decades of investigation, no explanation has ever been fully proven. And the mystery of Dyatlov Pass continues to haunt history. Snowflake emoji, ghost emoji. In 1922, a small farm called Hinterkaifeck farm stood alone in the countryside of Bavaria. The farm was home to 6 members of the same family. In the days before the tragedy, strange things began to happen around the property. The farmer reported seeing mysterious footprints in the snow leading from the forest toward the house. But what made it even more disturbing was that no footprints were found leaving the farm. The family also reported hearing unusual noises coming from the attic during the night. Yet when they went to investigate, no one was there. A few days later, something truly horrific would be discovered. Ghost emoji, derelict house emoji. A few days later, neighbors became worried when no one was seen at Hinterkaifeck farm. When people finally entered the property, they made a horrifying discovery. All 6 members of the family had been murdered. Investigators believed the victims were lured one by one into the barn, where they were attacked. Even more disturbing, evidence suggested the killer may have remained on the farm for several days after the crime. Animals were still being fed, and food had been eaten inside the house. Despite a massive investigation, the murders were never solved. To this day, the mystery of Hinterkaifeck murders remains one of the most chilling crimes in history. Ghost emoji, derelict house emoji. History is full of mysteries that remain unexplained even after decades of investigation. The tragic events at Dyatlov Pass continue to raise disturbing questions about what truly happened to the 9 hikers on that freezing night in 1959. Despite modern research and new theories, the exact cause of their deaths remains uncertain. Years earlier, another terrifying mystery shocked the countryside of Bavaria. The brutal killings connected to the Hinterkaifeck murders remain one of the most disturbing unsolved crimes in European history. Even today, no one knows who committed the murders or why they happened. These stories remind us that some events in history still hide secrets that may never be fully uncovered. And perhaps the truth behind these mysteries is still waiting to be discovered. Somewhere in the shadows, ghost emoji.